Okay, good morning, I think, or good afternoon, I'm not sure. I hope you are doing well. I hope you had a good weekend. Unfortunately, I can't be with you today. Like I said, I'm hoping to be with you on Friday. Now, I tried a few times to sit down and plan and prep you guys kind of starting off the next stage of your assignment. But actually, I figured considering there's been a few of you who have struggled with the other section of the assignment, and there's been a few of you actually, most of you haven't actually submitted it yet. I will come in on Friday, and what we'll do on Friday is we will just play catch up. We'll have a look at what you've done so far. We'll have a talk about what you're struggling with. Then, if we have time on Friday, we will go on to have a look at the next section of your assignment, which means that today, for the first half of this lesson, unless I don't get this finished in time, for the first half of this lesson, you will be looking at your unseen analysis, and then for the second half you'll be watching Buffy. That might be inverted, you might be watching this in the second half of your lesson, which is fine. Your unseen analysis is part of your higher exam. It's worth 10 marks. If you did National 5, you will be familiar with unseen analysis. It's just that at higher, it's a little bit different. I will require a little bit more from you, and I'm going to explain exactly how and why in just a moment. So, can you take a fresh page in your jotter? Can you take the heading of unseen analysis for me? And thank you to whoever is taking the class. I really appreciate that. And can you pause the video just to allow them a little bit of time to get their jotters out, open, and get the heading of unseen analysis written down? Thank you very much. Alright, there should be plenty of time. I don't know why I paused so long. The video should have been paused. So, what you need to know, your unseen analysis is part of paper 1. Paper 1 is where you analyse media content. It's 2 hours and 30. You'll probably spend about 30 minutes on your unseen analysis. The question will always be the same. What I mean by that is you will always be asked the same question. It will simply apply to 2 different pieces of media. You will be studying poster analysis. And I made a big deal of this last year, and I'm going to make a big deal of this year. In the exam, you will turn to poster analysis for your unseen analysis, okay? You will not turn to the advert. You will not turn to the magazine cover. You'll turn to the poster, because posters are what we are studying, posters are what we will be looking at, and posters are what you will be prepared for. All right. I would say in excess of 90% of people doing media do the poster analysis because it's generally considered to be more straightforward. All right. So we will be doing the poster analysis. It's worth 10 marks, and there must be at least 5 developed points of discussion on how the 2 posters are similar or different. All right. Now, just to be clear, at higher, the difference is at National 5, you wouldn't have 2 posters, you'd only have 1. And you just talk about that poster and what it was doing. At National 5, this is a compare and contrast question. I don't know how far along all of you are with English, but if you're doing higher English, your close reading final question is a compare and contrast between 2 passages. This is a very similar idea, okay? You're comparing and contrasting the 2 posters. You're telling me what similarities you notice, and if there's a lot of similarities, you just stick with that, or what differences you notice. If the posters have some similarities and some differences, you can mention that as well. But you have to analyse one, analyse the other, and then compare the 2. All right, and I will explain that more in a moment. All right. There's going to be a wee bit of copying down in this lesson, I'm afraid. If I was there, I would have printed stuff off for you. Unfortunately, I'm not, so this is the best we're going to have to do. What I want you to do is, can you copy this down or take a picture of it on your phone so that you have access to it for this lesson? All right, I'm going to talk through it just now, and then I will ask whoever is covering the class to pause the PowerPoint just for a minute so that you guys have time to get this down. This is the question. This is the question that you will always be asked in media. All right, for your unseen analysis, it's always this question. Analyze in detail how relevant key aspects of media literacy have been used in similar and/or different ways in your chosen pair of media texts. You must make reference to both texts. In your answer, you must make at least 5 developed points of analysis and refer to at least 2 of the following key aspects: language, representation, categories, narrative, audience, institutions, and society. Right? I want to draw your attention to a couple of different things here. Okay. Basically, this is saying analyze the 2 posters using your knowledge of the key aspects and discuss how they are similar and different and the impact they have. The thing that I really want to draw your attention to is that you must have 5 developed points. If you drop a point, all right, it's not like you only drop 2 marks. If you drop a point, I think you drop 3 or 4 marks. Okay, you've got to have 5 points. Even if one of them is completely wrong, having 5 points is important to show that you've understood and read the question. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, you must refer to at least 2 key aspects. If you did all your analysis, great analysis, apt analysis, accurate analysis, you only talked about language, the most you could get is 4. Okay? You have to talk about at least 2. I don't think I've seen people get 10 marks without mentioning at least 3. The easiest ones to talk about are going to be language, representation, narrative, and audience. All right. You might recognize these as your content-based media, not your context. All right. Categories, institutions, and society is much more difficult to pick up from a poster, especially because they tend to do either quite modern posters or quite obscure posters. Okay. So all you need to understand from this question is it's asking you to look at both posters, analyze them using media terminology, and then compare how they are working. Right. If whoever's taking the class could pause this just so that everyone can either get a picture of that or get it written down, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. All right. Now, I don't know. I don't think I need you to copy this down. You can if you want. Sorry, one wee sec. I do apologise about that. My daughter was covered in mud. What were we talking about? I'm going to say yes, actually. Copy these down. I'm asking you to copy these down because they're things that you might not think about commenting on. Some of them, if you took media at National 5, you definitely will. All right, if you definitely think about the style of the font or the size of the font, you think about things like the billing block and the information put in, you think about the tagline. But if you haven't taken media before, these might be elements that you might not comment on or you might not feel so comfortable commenting on. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them at length right now. Okay, I will go over your unseen analysis more when I'm in the class. This is just to give us a first pass at it and a bit of understanding. But I will give you a quick run through of them, and then again at the end of that run through, I will ask whoever's taking the class to pause this so that you can all make sure you've got either a picture of this or you've got it copied down. Alright. First one is style of fonts. Okay, style of fonts is quite important. You can comment on it quite generically, or you can comment on it quite specifically. If you are looking at it specifically, you're looking at things like sans serif versus serif. All right, serifed fonts are fonts that look a little bit fancy, basically. That's the only way to describe it. They're fonts with the wee flourishes at the end, the wee extensions off the bottoms, okay? The one that we've got here is sans serif, all right? This font here is sans serif, whereas if I went for, let's say, no, times 4 isn't even a thing. If I went for Times New Roman and I did this is serif, what you'll notice is the difference between the two. The T here, very basic, 2 lines. This one has 2 lines, but it also has the fancy wee extendy bits. Those fancy wee extendy bits make a font serifed. If something is serifed, it's exactly what you would think. It's a little bit fancier. It's maybe a little bit more formal. Okay, sans serif without the serifs means that it's perhaps more basic. It's trying to be a bit bolder or stand out a little bit more. Generally, you would see kind of sans serif, that kind of bolder font for kind of really run of the mill action movies, older action movies, the Expendables, things like that. And you would see your serifed fonts maybe for romantic comedies, movies that are maybe a little bit more highbrow or are trying to be a little bit more highbrow. And that'll be relevant in a wee minute. The size of the fonts used is also important. Again, talking about the If you haven't seen the Expendables, by the way, it's the most brilliantly ridiculous action movie to come out in the last. Ooh, I was going to say in the last decade. Am I being optimistic about my own age? Certainly to come out in the last wee while is what we're going to go with there. Um, with that, if it's kind of big and bold and right in your face, this really big fat font, all right, it's probably trying to tell you something about the movie. The movie is probably going to be big and bold and in your face, an action movie or something like that. Whereas if the font is quite small, quite dainty, quite flowery, then again you're looking at something maybe a little bit more like a comedy or a romantic comedy or something like that. Okay. Position of the title I'll talk about when I'm in. It's one of the more difficult things to write about. Honestly, I wouldn't bother. But if you're talking about the title in general, it can be important. Your eye is drawn to the top of a poster and you work your way down. That tends to be what happens. If the title's at the top, it means the title is the important thing. It might mean that the title is trying to make a reference, trying to get you to understand something about the movie. If the title's at the bottom, it's still important, but it means they want you to see the poster first before getting to the title. Maybe because the title is less important, because maybe you already know. If it was The Avengers Endgame, you're not going to see a picture of all the Avengers and be like, huh, I wonder what romantic comedy that is. You're going to be like, oh, that's probably The Avengers again, because they've been out tons. Okay? But don't worry too much about position of title. Actors or directors' names and positions and size is important, especially if you recognise them. This is from Visionary Joss Whedon or something like that, and you could go, oh, Joss Whedon, he did Avengers, he did Buffy, he did Angel, he did Firefly, he did a lot of very successful films and TV shows, mainly in that kind of sci-fi superhero element genre. Then you instantly know a little bit that you can talk about. If the actors or so if the let's start with directors. If the directors' names are quite kind of front and central, you're meant to recognise them. They're not going to go from the directing mind of Roger Hargreaves, and then you're going to be sitting there going, "Who the hell is that?" Okay, he's actually the one who wrote the Mr. Men books. Apparently, I just read it off of a book. Um, if it's making a big deal of the director's name, the director's a big deal. Okay, you're meant to understand who they are and why they're there. The actors, again, it can be one of two things. If the actors, like, it can be quite interesting. You could have posters that have some of the most famous actors in the world on it and no actors' names because you're meant to recognize them. You're meant to look at it and go, ah, that's Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Everyone knows who he is. So you don't need to put his name on it. Whereas if it was Black Panther 1, and a relevant, pertinent example, you might put Chadwick Boseman on like his name on your poster because you might not expect people to know who he is, and they might read the name and go, "Oh no, I remember him from whatever." Okay, so including names or not is a decision that you basically have to judge when you see the poster. If it's a poster with absolutely nobody that anyone is going to ever recognize, like a B kind of movie horror film, and by that I do not mean a movie about bees. I mean a B-listed kind of not very high budget, not very big names in it. If it's a kind of B movie horror film, you're probably not going to bother putting the names of the actors on it because then no one's ever going to recognize them. If the actors are somewhat famous, but at this stage maybe not household names, you'll put the names on it. And if they are big, massive names, it's up to you. You can put the names on it because you want to sell the fact that, look, we've got Dwayne Johnson in our movie, or you can leave them out because it's got a picture of Dwayne Johnson. Everyone's going to know. Okay? References to other texts and makers of those texts, the producers of those texts, based on things, stuff like that. So if it says from the studio that brought you Frozen, you instantly know, okay, they're probably targeting a similar audience as Frozen. Right? It's probably going to have a lot of similar tropes and styles as Frozen. It's going to be a similar kind of idea. If it goes from the minds that brought you Cabin in the Woods, so now you're looking at maybe a comedy horror, something a little bit dark, something a little bit different. Okay, it's very relevant to think about that. And again, guys, you will be in a much better position if you recognize, if it says something like from the minds that brought you, and it references a movie that you have never heard of in your life, uh, you can't comment on it, okay, because you won't be able to get enough from it. You won't be able to say, oh, it references, um, I don't know, it references Meet Joe Black. I'm assuming most of you haven't seen Meet Joe Black. It's from the minds that brought you Meet Joe Black, and you've never seen it. You can't then say, so I know it's going to be blah, 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 which you don't know. All right? So you can only comment on this if you understand who is making the reference or what they are referencing. Okay? If it's got reviews and you know who they are by, you can comment on them. You can comment on reviews without knowing who they're by because a review is a review. But if you know who they're by, it lends it a little bit more strength. If you can say Empire Cinema and you can talk about that and then you can talk about the review itself, you've got a wee bit more weight in it. Release date tells you a little bit about the poster. Is it a teaser poster or is it actually a full poster? If it says coming soon, you're probably looking at a teaser poster. If it gives you a specific date, you're probably looking at a full movie poster. This is the one that I think is most important. I don't know why it's dropped number 7th, but this is the one I think is going to be the easiest for you. Easily identifiable genre markers. You're looking at props. You're looking at, now we can kind of combine these two. You're looking at props. You're looking at the actors chosen. You're looking at the costumes they're wearing. You're looking at the color scheme. Is there any hint to setting? All right. You're basically looking at media language and, importantly, how it informs genre. All right. That should be pretty straightforward. That's basically all we did at National 5. This is all kind of a little bit extra, but that's really important. Position and size of pictures of actors or other characters, what they're wearing, things like that. All right. The positioning and size of the pictures of actors is really important. If we jump forward to the ones that we're going to be doing, some people are bigger, and then you get some kind of moderately bigger, and then you get your kind of smaller people. Whereas here you've got big floaty heads, but you've got a full body shot of Thor. So here it's up to you to decide kind of how to interpret that. But if someone is included bigger or differently from everyone else, you might assume that they are a bigger or different role from everyone else in that particular piece. Colours are important. We did colours the other day. Bright sunny colours, bright sunny movie. Dark grim colours, dark grim movie. Silvers and blacks and reds and oranges tend to be action movies. Reds and blacks tend to be horror movies. Golds and greens and reds tend to be kind of romantic movies. Okay, it's up to you to find the colours that will allow you to best analyse your piece of media. And the tagline. The tagline, for those of you who don't know, is a little phrase attached to the movie. So here, now I don't know how well you can see these in a wee moment when I next pause. If someone could close the curtains as effectively as you can so that you can see these. It looks to be a sunny day, so we will need the curtains closed. But you do have two taglines: "Long live the King" in Black Panther, and "Courage is immortal" in Thor. Alright, so you have taglines. Going back to here. And again, you can tell me what those taglines tell us about. I would probably focus on narrative. The tagline itself is an example of language, but I would focus on what it tells us about the narrative of the movies and how these narratives might be similar and are different. Now, there are different ways to plan your answer. This is a way. I think this is a little bit OTT. I think it's a little bit over the top. But if you like it, you can do this. You can put down the key things you notice down the left hand side: fonts, title, actors' names, costumes, colours, taglines, props, genre markers, release date, things like that. You can tell me what key aspect you think has been covered here, and then you can give a very brief description on a developing point. I think that would take up the majority of your time for your answer, but some media teachers swear by it. Some media teachers say this is the best way to make sure that you get down absolutely everything you can. Right? And have I put this down anywhere? I have not. I'm going to recommend you do it. Oh, yeah, I have. That's what I'm recommending. I'm going to recommend you do it in a slightly different way, which is this way. I'm sorry, I never actually. I assume you all had time to copy this down because I talked for ages. If you haven't, could the teacher taking the class please pause and give you that chance just now? Thank you. Sorry. All right. And now can you copy this down as well? And once whoever gets this copy down first, if you could close the curtains at the back, and whoever is sitting closest to the side of the classroom, when you get this copy down, could you help close the curtains there too? Thank you. So, when answering, I would break your answer up into 5 paragraphs minimum. Now, I am yet to get complete clarification on this, but I assume 5 paragraphs is enough because each paragraph should be worth 2 marks. 1 mark for your comment on one piece, 1 mark for your comment on the other, provided, and this is really important, provided you have compared the differences or similarities and the impact that they have. If you just say, now I'm going to click off this, I will come back to it. If you just say, in Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman is at the top of the poster, he is the biggest character, he's looming over all the others, and this tells us that he is important, possibly a main character, and then you say, in Thor, he is in the center of the poster. He's the only one who gets a full body kind of shot in that poster. Although the others appear as bigger heads, Thor very much dominates the entirety of the poster, telling us he is a main character. And then you don't talk about the connection between the two, you wouldn't get the marks. You have to then connect it and say, though the composition of the posters are different, with one using a kind of the actor looming over the others and being bigger than the others, and the other one putting the actor in the centre of the poster, the effect is the same. We understand who the main characters are. You need to compare and contrast what is being done. Our attention is being drawn to the actors, that's a similarity. The difference is in how. Okay? If you, I've gone forwards. If you were to talk about the supporting actors, that's done very, very differently. Predominantly kind of main, like, kind of mid shots, I'd say here. Okay, you've got kind of from the hips up for most of them. But they're all quite small. Here you have a focus on their faces. You might want to think about what is it about these actors that means that we can just focus on their face and that feels like enough. What it is about them that means that that is enough information compared to these actors where we're given a bit more, we're given a little bit more information about who they are, what they're holding. You might want to think about the type of poster. Is one of these a full movie poster, so it's giving away more hints about the plot, about the characters, about what might go on? And is one of these maybe a character poster or a teaser poster, so it's a bit more minimalist? Alright? There's a lot you can talk about there. And if you're going through it, you would talk about things like composition, and then you talk about the differences, and then you talk about the different impacts. And that's what this outlines. The first thing you do is you name a technique that is used in both pieces of media. Now, I will come to repeal that and say you can say this one uses this technique, this one doesn't use this technique, and that means. But for just now, it's more important for me to see that you can compare and contrast two techniques being used in a similar or even in very different ways. You need to be able to talk about that technique being used twice and not get boring, not get repetitive, and still be accurate. So the first thing you do is you name a technique that's being used in both pieces of media. I would deal with it one, then the other, and then I compare and contrast. So I would say, like I said, like I did previously, in Black Panther, the composition of the poster has Chadwick Boseman at the top, appearing bigger than all the other characters in that poster. This suggests that he is important, perhaps the main character. In Thor, although the four supporting actors appear as big faces at the top of the poster, much like Chadwick Boseman does, Thor himself actually appears front and central. He's the only character to get a full body shot. He is much more dynamic. and this maybe highlights him as the key character. However, the importance of the supporting cast cannot be understated. And then I would compare the two. One, to compare and contrast. All right. This is going to be a bit weird. It's going to be a bit tough, but you will get used to it. And I promise you, this should be some easy marks for you. Um, so, name the technique in both. Explain how it's being used in used in piece one. Okay, so the first poster you're looking at, and what the impact is. All right. Composition. He's big. That's how it's being used. Impact. We know he's important. That's what we learn from it. Okay, gives us an insight into narrative, and I would mention the word narrative, and I'm actually going to shove that in here. Impact is in piece one. Now, if you already copied this down, don't worry too much. But basically, in your paragraph, you should mention at least 2 different key aspects for each paragraph. Okay, that way you know you are dealing with enough. So the first thing is you name a technique and you analyze it for piece one, name a technique and you analyze it for piece two, and then you explain how the impact is similar or different in piece two from piece one. Right? You can give a brief summary. These two are basically the same thing. Okay, I should probably clarify that. These two are probably the same thing. You give me a summary as to what the similarities or differences are. What that means is to get your 2 marks, you've got a fairly chunky paragraph. Alright, you've got quite a lot that you've written. We will come back to this. This is actually going to be the poster that you are going to do. But I want to go forwards and just look at a few different things. At National 5, if you took media at National 5, all your points had to refer to were target audience, the language that was being used, and the purpose. Okay, purpose of posters always to drive people to the cinema, build up interest or hype for a film. Okay, that's it. At higher, you must do all of this stuff anyway. That's the first part of your answer. But then you must discuss the similarities and or differences in the techniques used and the impact. Right? That's the important bit. That's the different bit. That's the extra writing bit. Okay? But I have faith in your ability to do it. You'll have 30 minutes. This is how I would plan. All right, I would write your 7 key aspects at the top of the page. I would focus mainly on your content, to be honest. So your language, narrative, representation, and the other one, whose name escapes me. But I would write them at the top. Briefly write examples that you will use next to the key aspects. So if I was looking at this poster, I would have, representation. Predominantly black cast represented on the poster, predominantly white cast represented on the poster. What's the different targeting an audience and society? You could then talk about the year, talk about Black Lives Matter, and then just say at this point, Black Lives Matter 2010. It wasn't really a thing. It wasn't a campaign. And so there was no real focus on it. Whitewashing at Hollywood and in the Oscars hadn't been highlighted either. Your own personal knowledge will come into this and it will help you or not. Okay. I forgot what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, I'm talking about your notes. So I might go representation, just write it in the middle. Say representation, predominantly black, predominantly white, and then we arrow Black Lives Matter. And that gives me that's a 2 mark paragraph I can talk about right there. Composition, all right, top and big, middle and full body. Similar effect, different technique. That's 2 marks. Okay. Then I might go for names. Okay. We've got names up here, names and references. Let's go for written code. We've got names and references up here. We've got no names, but we do have a reference. Okay. Actually, names no reference, reference no names. So what does that tell you about this movie? Why does this movie not have to connect itself to Iron Man like Thor did? What is it about it? The fact that this came out in 2018 and this came out in 2010. Why does it no longer feel the need to say from the studios that brought you Iron Man? Why does this one feel the need to say it? Why does this one feel the need to put names in? Why does this one feel like it doesn't? Okay, and I would put that in. So I put in names, no names, reference, no reference. Okay, your titles. This is looking very closely. This is serifed. Okay, it's got your wee fancy bits, like just off the tick of the eye there. But things that I would focus on here would be that kind of royal blue colour. I would focus on the plunging N, given that we're talking about Black Panther with claws and teeth and stuff. And I would focus on the fact that it's quite bold and bright. Okay, similarities here in the fact that it is very much serifed. Okay, so you've got that fancy writing. It's bold. It's quite a metallic color though. There's a difference. This one has blues. This one has metals. Okay, up to you what you take from it. They would be the kind of notes I would be making. You can use P chains if you want. All right, point, evidence, explain. What I would do with that is I would say point composition is used to emphasize characters in Black Panther. Evidence: Chadwick Boseman is at the top of the poster and he's bigger than everyone else. Explanation: this tells us that he is a main character. He doesn't look threatening, so he's perhaps the protagonist and hero. Brilliant. That's a solid kind of most of the way to a mark. Just some key phrases to use. Both are similar in that blah 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 blah. However, where they differ, words like however, similarly, one way in which they are the same, one way in which they are different, one impact of this is, the difference in impact is, things like that. Okay, just wee phrases. If you want, you can take a picture of this. If whoever is taking the class could give them the opportunity either to copy this down or take a picture of it, I would be very much obliged. Okay, thank you very much. Ultimately, what I'm going to ask you to do is have a bash at analysing these posters. Alright, comparing and contrasting them using the method that I have just talked you through. I want you to try and do it in half an hour, and I want you to do it in lined paper. The lined paper is at the front of the class. It is in my bookshelf. It should be the second shelf down on the far right. If someone could hand that out, that would be great. Make sure you put your name on it. If you don't put your name on it, it's no use to me. And I want you to hand these in at the end of the lesson. There are boxes on the bookshelf and on the other kind of wee cupboard in my room. One of them has higher media put on it. If these could be put in that would be great. When you're done, I want you to be given half an hour, and then I want them collected in. And what I'm planning on doing is using this as your kind of unsupported assessment. So if there's anyone who is entitled to reader scribes or anything like that, this is your unsupported assessment, and then later on we'll do a supported version of this, and it'll be a nice easy way to kind of build that evidence. When you're doing this, key points to focus on very quickly are the things I'm already talking about. Composition, okay, where things appear, background and color, okay, black rock, don't see much. You've got things that you can see here, it's blue instead of black. Representation, names, okay, references, taglines, billing blocks, you've got a date here and no date here. Props, costume, okay, anything like that. There's plenty you can talk about. Make sure that no matter what you're referencing from the poster, you link it back to, so when you're talking about the poster, you will be talking about media language, and then you link that back to either narrative, representation, category, society, institutions, something like that. Okay. If whoever's taking the class could take a wee note of the time and give them half an hour. If there is less than half an hour left in this class, then you might be as well. No, if there's less than half an hour, just do it anyway and pick up the time in the second part of the lesson. I hope you're all doing well, and hopefully you are set up to watch Buffy for the next part of this lesson. I look forward to seeing you on Friday, all going well at my end. And I hope, like I said, you had a fantastic weekend and you're having a lovely day.